particular packet tracer, we're going to show how to set up port security on a layer 2 device on a switch. So if we look up here what we have, I'm going to just use the second floor accounting area for this tutorial. So we have, so we've got our router that's got our gigabit internet interface is set up, as well as our switch. Now you see right now we've got 3 devices connected to the switch on Ethernet port 1, Ethernet 2, and I'm sorry, fast port 1, fast 2, and fast 3. They're up and running. There's no VLANs, so we're going to keep this simple. So, but we also have this insider threat PC. This is the guy who's trying to break into our network, and he's going to do it by trying to plug in his PC into a rogue jack somewhere. All right, so how do we protect that? Well, what we're going to do is set up port security so that this switch will the ports on this switch will only recognize the MAC address of the device that is assigned to it. So if we look at this this PC, the accounting manager's PC, hover over that, and one of the things you want to copy down is the MAC address. Okay, the MAC address for this one is 0060.5cc9.4195. You see it over on the left, on the far right side where it says MAC address. We're just going to write that down, so because we're gonna use that here in a second when we set up port security. Now I also have DHCP configured on this router, so these computers are pulling IP addresses dynamically from the router. Okay, so to set up port security on this switch, we're going to go into the switch configuration to the CLI of this switch, enable, do a config. All right, once we get there, now we're going to set this up 2 ways. First way is very simple, kind of a manual, a static way, and then there's also a dynamic way of doing this as well. So the first way I'm going to show you is the manual or the static way of doing this. So we're going to tell it the interface, and which is the fast Ethernet 01, the first port. Okay, port 1. Now we're going to go into the switch port settings and port dash security, port security. My bad, I forgot a step there in the middle. So what we're going to do is switch, because right now this is a dynamic port. Switch port, and we're going to change the mode to access. Switch port mode access. Now we'll do the port security. There we go. So now it's no longer a dynamic port. Okay, so we're going to do port security. Now the same thing. We'll type switch port dash security. And MAC address, MAC dash address, and this is where we just type in the MAC address of that computer, 0060.5cc9.4195. So what I've done now, I have linked the MAC address of the accounting manager's PC to the first port on the switch. So let's do a show run to give you an idea. There we go. So this is, if you look at these, what's configured on that port. Like I said, we changed the mode, we turned on port security, and it is linked to this particular MAC address. So let's see if that computer's working. So what we're going to do is let's go to this computer, and we're going to ping another device on our network. Let's see, what is our sales manager's IP address? 10.98. Okay, so we're going to ping the sales manager from the accounting, just to be sure that it's actually working. All right, so desktop command prompt ping 192.168.10.98, and yeah, so there we go. So we've got connectivity from the account manager through the switch, through the router, back to the other network. All right, so now what we're going to do, we're going to disconnect this PC, this insider threat. He brings his laptop in. I should have made that a laptop, I guess, but he brings his system in and connects. Now, the first thing you see that it is not able to even pull an IP address from the DHCP server, even though it's connected. It cannot pull an IP address. So without an IP address, this is a pretty useless device. And there it goes. Once port security recognized that was a different MAC address, you see what it did? It completely turned off that port. So let's take a look at our configurations. So if I look at these other ports in the configuration port, you see they're turned on. If I look at port 1, it is the port status turned off. So you see what port security, boom, shut it down. It was unable to first couldn't even get an IP address, and second, it actually shut the port off completely. Now there are different modes that we have when we're doing port security, where you can have it actually different what we call violation modes. Where it can shut the port off completely, like we have it. That's the default. Or you can have it in a restricted mode to where it won't shut the port off, but it's not going to pass any traffic across that port. So actually, there's different ways that you can set this up, in different modes, I guess I would call them, different violation modes. And three, actually, it's actually three. It's protect, restrict, and shut down. We're in the shutdown mode right now. Okay, so let's look at another way that we could also we can configure this. There's a dynamic method, of configuring these ports. So let's go back into our switch configuration. Do an exit. So now we're going to do the entire range. Okay, so interface range, fast Ethernet 1 through 24. Okay, and switch port, again the mode access, and again it helps if you spell it correctly. Switch port, port security. Okay, and now again switch port, port security, maximum 1. And what that is going to say that all 24 ports on this switch is only authorized to have one MAC address. So what you can do with port security, you can actually set up to where you can have multiple MAC addresses authorized on that port. But let's say if you did have 2 users who were authorized, or let's say one user had 2 computers, a desktop and a laptop, and you gave them that one port. That way they could use both of those computers on that port, and port security would not shut it down. But here we're going to set up maximum of 1, and also we want to set up what we call sticky MAC, to where when the computer is plugged in, it will learn automatically the MAC address of that computer. That way we don't have to type all the MAC addresses in manually. So switch port security. So MAC address, and we're going to use sticky. Okay, which means that now it will learn those themselves. And let's say if we want to change the violation. Remember, there's three violation settings: protect, restrict, shut down. So that we would do the same thing. Hopefully you're seeing the pattern here. The first thing you're going to type when you're doing a command is a switch port, followed by port security, and then the actual command that you're going to run. This is violation. So we're going to change the violation to restrict. Okay, let's exit. Exit. And what we'll just do here is do a show run. So there you go. Now you see every, except the first port where we actually already had the MAC address physically loaded in. Now the rest of these ports, all 24 ports on this switch, will learn the MAC address of what's connected to it. So let's say if we connect, let's just try, we're going to connect the PC manager. We're going to connect them to the next port, which is going to be 04. And again, the sticky MAC will learn the MAC address of that and assign it to the port. So now we still got this port 1. Actually, it's been shut down. It's an insider threat, we think. Okay, so how do we fix that? Well, first thing we want to do is disconnect that PC, but we still want to be able to use the port. So now what we can do is turn that port back on. Go to that interface F01, and do a no shut there, and that turned that interface back on. And now if we look at all our interfaces, there's nothing connected to that port, so so it shows it down. If we look at and go to configuration, there we see that port is back up. Okay, so that's how port security works. So now that you've got port security set up on your switch, especially in the dynamic mode that we just completed, how do you know which ports have something connected? Well, there's a way of doing that. It's pretty simple. If we go into our switch, and what we're going to do is just real simple. Just do a show port security address. All right. And what that does, that gives us a little table that shows everything that's connected to which MAC addresses are connected to each port. So if we look at on this particular switch, there's not on the port 1, we did a secure configuration of the MAC address for the account manager PC. The server is on port 2. That's the MAC address. It's sticky. And if you remember, we then connected the PC, the account manager PC, to port 4. So that's why you see the same MAC address twice. So it was securely configured when we did our first configuration manually. We set up sticky MAC, and then we connected that computer to port 4. Likewise, let's say if we found that this guy is really not an insider threat, we want to allow him to get onto the network. So let's connect his PC back up, and we're going to put him on the port 5, fast Ethernet 5. Now it takes a little while for the handshakes to happen, so that's why I use my fast forward button quite a bit. Okay, let's run the same command again. And see, there we go. So that shows that it just popped up 00E0 B06. And what we can do is to confirm that, we can go up to look at the PC 00E0 B06E 80A4. And it's the same MAC address. So that is a way when you're running dynamic in a dynamic mode, you can see what's authorized, what MAC addresses are authorized or have been connected to each of the ports and have been assigned to each of the ports. Okay.